Previously on Tongue of the Serpent, the fountain gave up what memory had been hiding. Evelyn saw where the bargain began, with the ordinary cruelty of a father deciding what could be spent. Morvant wanted the future of the Devereux line. Lucien was preserved for it. Sabine was chosen in his place. And what has been moving through the crew no longer looks like sorrow alone. It looks like interruption. It looks like a road repeatedly broken before its end. This is Season 3, Episode 22. What was stored? Lucien and the family records. Lucien Devereux retreated to the records room, not to escape the pain, but to give it shelving. The Devereux papers lived in the back of the crew in a narrow room lined with old cabinets and warped shelves, where dust had achieved the status of dynasty, and the air smelled of vellum, candle soot, and secrets too proud to decay properly. It was the sort of room built by people who believed that if they wrote something in a fine enough hand, it ceased to be a crime and became an inheritance. Evelyn followed, staying just near enough to matter. Alice Renault came too, carrying her notes and the brittle focus of a woman prepared to wrestle a century for proper definitions. Madame Claudette drifted at the edges, prowling lightly between shelves, touching nothing unless she had to. She looked at the cabinets, the way one looks at a reliquary one suspects contains either a saint's finger or an expensive lie. Lucien set the journal down and began opening ledgers, household accounts, church correspondence, birth notations, property transfers, private memorandum written in language so polished it practically winked at its own hypocrisy. The room closed in around them by degrees. Paper does that. People think archives are quiet, but they're not. They whisper in piles. They suffocate politely. Every page insists on being the innocent cousin of the page beside it. Alice leaned over one document and frowned.
Here.
Lucien stepped closer. It was not a confession. Families like his did not confess. They curated. The line sat in the middle of a memorandum regarding succession, phrased with the chilling calm of administrative necessity. The son must be preserved for the continuity of the house. It was written with the serenity of bureaucracy, preserved, as if he were a peach in syrup, a portrait under varnish, a fine chair wrapped in linen and kept from the weather. Lucien stared at the words until they began to lose shape. Evelyn refrained from touching him, but she stood near enough that he could have leaned, if he had been the sort of man who leaned. Alice straightened her shoulders.
There's more.
There usually was. A burial ledger surfaced next, then a church registry, then a private family inventory with too many blank spaces. The omissions gathered themselves quickly, like crows. No proper priest notation, no burial witness in the ordinary civic hand, a gap between the date of death and the date of interment that sat wrong in the page, wrong in the bones, wrong in the room. Next, they found a directive marked Private Family Handling, and a page cut cleanly from a volume so old the violence of the absence seemed almost fresh. Lucien turned page after page, faster now, every movement controlled so tightly it bordered on cruelty. Not toward them, but toward himself.
They didn't tell anyone.
He
She
said.
never seems
No
to
one
appear
answered.
fully in a room. No investigation.
Lucien said, every word more precise than the last.
They allowed no breath of scandal, prevented the priest's involvement with their questions. They erased her in the process.
Claudette near the cabinets murmured,
Some families hide skeletons. Yours seem to have filed them.
Lucien almost smiled. Almost. He opened another register, this one thinner, the leather cracked and faintly damp at the edges. Burial records or something pretending to be. Alice pointed, voice grim.
Here.
One entry, Sabine's name. The handwriting was neat enough to be insulting. Lucien read aloud.
Interred by family authority, observed under private right. Matter concluded without public declaration.
The moment the word interred left his mouth, the room changed, just a subtle pressure, like the house inhaling through its teeth. Lucien looked back at the page. The ink still said interred, but in the room, faint as breath against old silver, another word moved. Kept. He heard it again. Not exactly in his ears, but in the architecture, in the wood, in the leather's spine, a whisper tucked inside the paper, like a blade hidden in a prayer book. Kept. Evelyn's head lifted at once. She heard something too, if not that word, then the wound beneath it. Lucien stared at the entry, then at the missing witness line, the missing priest, the missing page, the careful little euphemisms lined up like servants, pretending not to notice blood on the stairs. And then he understood. The family had not merely buried Sabine badly. They had organized her disappearance, curated the record, and wrapped the whole thing in respectable language until grief itself had trouble finding a way in. Lucien closed the book with a sound like a door being shut on a man too late.
They didn't bury her.
He said. His voice was calm now. That was the worst of it.
They managed her.
Evelyn maps the thresholds. They left the records room because there were only so many euphemisms a person can breathe before the lungs begin filing complaints. Back in the courtyard, the fountain waited with the patience of an old witness. The house had gone quiet again from attention. Crew silences had gradations. This one was the kind that suggested the building was leaning on its elbows. Evelyn stood beside the basin and began with a list. The fountain, she said. The mirrors, windows, when the light goes strange, dream space, polished glass, reflections in places that aren't meant to hold them. Lucien sat opposite her, one hand still resting on the cold rim, as though he might feel an answer move through the stone if he were stubborn enough.
Doorways.
He added after a moment.
Or the edges of them. She never seems to appear fully in a room.
Alice nodded at once, the exhaustion in her face briefly overrun by thought.
That's not random.
Nothing but the ghost is random.
Claudette said.
Only rude.
Alice ignored this with the professionalism of someone long accustomed to being surrounded by difficult women, and one particularly operatic uncle. She crossed to the fountain and began arranging the pattern in the air with her fingers, invisible points connected by inference.
They're all transitional sites,
she said.
not haunting points, threshold points.
Lucien's brow furrowed.
Meaning?
Meaning she's not attached to the crew in the usual way, Evelyn said softly, seeing it as she spoke. She isn't circling one wound. She's reaching for exits. The word altered the mood of the courtyard. Exits. Routes. Claudette hummed low in her throat.
Well, that's ugly.
Lucien looked at the fountain again.
Personal.
He said almost to himself.
Every time I've seen her, it's felt like an interruption, like catching someone in the act of leaving.
Evelyn nodded. A spirit bound to a place settled into it. A spirit maddened by grief worried at it like a loose tooth. A spirit sharpened by vengeance stalked. Sabine did none of those things. She reached thresholds. She leaned toward openings. She kept almost becoming everywhere. If she can keep doing that, Evelyn said, then some part of her is still intact enough to choose direction. Alice looked up sharply.
Yes.
Lucien frowned.
I dislike the excitement in your voice.
You dislike the vocabulary.
Alice said.
That's different.
He gave her a pointed look. She held her ground.
If Morvant didn't devour all of what was promised, the Sabine may still be in a technical sense partly self-possessed.
The phrase landed in the courtyard with all the warmth of a legal document left on a grave. Lucien recoiled from it at once.
Do not speak of my sister as if she is a disputed parcel of land.
Alice's expression gentled, but she did not retreat.
I'm speaking of her the way that the bargain did.
That shut him up, if not down. Evelyn laid her palm on the fountain rim. Then she may not only be a spirit in distress.
No,
Alice said.
she may have standing.
Claudette's bracelets gave a soft, ominous chiming as she folded her arms.
Then stop asking why she's still here,
She said.
and start asking whether hell ever got the right to keep her.
Alice and Claudette find the rule. The records room of the crew had, over the years, become less a storage space than an argument with reality. Shelves bowed under the weight of cracked folios, saint cards, stoppered jars, taxidermied things that no respectable taxidermist would admit to, and a series of drawers labeled in Lucien's precise hand with descriptions that sounded either deeply scholarly or mildly threatening. One read, "Mirrors non-compliant." Another read, "Relics humming." A third, less reassuringly, had once read, "Do not open until Tuesday," and then been crossed out so many times it now simply looked embarrassed. Alice had colonized the central table with papers. Claudette, by contrast, treated tables as places one passed through on the way to revelation.
Cross-reference that one with the funerary text.
Alice said, flipping pages.
No, the other funerary text, the one with the mirrored clauses.
Cher, if you say mirrored clauses at me again, I'm charging tuition.
Alice remained focused on the papers.
That is fair.
Claudette huffed, but she was smiling faintly. She moved to the cabinet where Lucien kept the more difficult materials and drew out a slim bundle of folios wrapped in black, faded ribbon.
You know,
She said.
there are easier ways to spend an afternoon than proving an infernal contract was badly assembled.
Lucien remained by the shelves, silent, arms folded too tightly. He had the expression of a man attending his own family autopsy. Alice laid out text after text, building a bridge from one tradition to another. Akkadian fragments, folk Catholic burial notes, a torn translation of a Polish ritual codex, Louisiana grave practices written in a hand so old the letters seemed to be aging even now. They were linked by structure rather than symbol, by rule rather than image. At last, Alice sat back.
There,
she said. Claudette leaned over her shoulder. Alice traced the relevant lines with one finger.
In blood-bound demonic contracts involving substitution, a sacrifice that was neither willingly yielded nor fully dissolved may remain partially outside final claim.
Lucien's eyes narrowed.
In English?
Eyes wide with excitement, Evelyn responded. Morvant doesn't get to keep all of her if she never truly gave herself and he never finished the swallowing. Alice nodded.
More or less.
Darling, if I say it your way, the room will die of old age before the point arrives.
Claudette commented. Alice moved to the next page without acknowledging the critique.
And this is worse,
she said. That got everybody's attention.
These traditions all agree on one thing. The modern occultists tend to sentinelize into uselessness.
She looked up.
The body matters.
Claudette's face went very still. Alice continued.
As mechanism, not as a symbol. If the body isn't properly handled, hidden, marked, burned, or left with an infernal residue inside it, dissolution cannot complete. The soul remains in reclusive proximity to the unresolved vessel.
Lucien shut his eyes briefly. Claudette mercifully translated.
The girl keeps getting yanked back to her own bones.
No one spoke for a moment after that because that was it, the lock clicking under the right pressure. Evelyn broke the silence first. And Sabine managed this how? Alice looked down at the texts again, then at the notes from the fountain, then at the copied fragments of Sabine's symbols.
She did something before the sacrifice completed,
she said.
Something enough.
Lucien's gaze sharpened.
Enough for what?
Enough to interrupt the claim,
Alice said.
She didn't destroy or reverse it, but she deformed it. Morvant was promised a future, potential, bright inheritance. Whatever Sabine did, she kept him from swallowing all of it.
Claudette's mouth curved grimly.
She broke the meal.
Not completely,
Alice said.
No.
Claudette agreed.
But enough to make it catch in the throat.
Lucien looked away then, and the grief in his face sharpened into something more dangerous. Alice turned another page.
There's more.
Of course there is, Evelyn murmured.
This section contradicts the others slightly,
Alice said.
Or expands them. It suggests that a spirit left partially self-possessed after a failed claim may under certain conditions be tethered rather than released.
Lucien frowned.
By what?
Alice hesitated.
It doesn't say. Only that interference after the fact is possible, if the intervening force is sufficiently powerful.
At that exact moment, a faint draft moved through the room. Not from the windows or the hall. It carried no obvious scent, yet Evelyn thought, absurdly and with immediate certainty, of ashes after rain, of heat gone formal, of something that had once worn a crown, learning to stand very still. The shelves gave a tiny creak, as if something in the room had just leaned closer to listen in, and then thought better of being noticed. Claudette glanced toward the dark corner near the relic cabinet, eyes narrowed but said nothing. Alice, who had either noticed nothing or chosen scholarship as a defense against it, bent to the final marked phrase on the page. Her voice, when she read it aloud, was quiet enough to feel like an unveiling.
What remains is the body keeps the road open.
Sabine appears with more will than fear. The house answered the rule, the way old houses answer anything important, by pretending, for one treacherous second, to become more itself. The back room drew inward. The change was subtle and ugly, a pressure shift that made the place feel briefly like a mouth. The little hairs along Evelyn's arm rose at once. The lamp flame narrowed. Somewhere in the hall, a mirror gave a soft, glassy tick, like a fingernail against a tooth. Then came the sound. From somewhere deeper in the house, the courtyard fountain gave a low, strained groan, as though the pipes beneath it had drawn one long breath and failed to release it. Water that should have been falling stopped falling. The silence after it was worse. Lucien's head lifted at once.
The courtyard,
He said and moved first. The others followed him through the hall. The water in the basin had gone dark and depthless, no longer reflecting the sky above it so much as considering whether skies were a temporary inconvenience. Then Sabine appeared, not all at once. She never had the luxury of arriving cleanly. First, the shape of her shoulders in the black water, then her face, pale with effort rather than passivity. Then one hand pressed to the inner skin of the reflection, as if the space between worlds were no thicker than glass and twice as cruel. She was not still, never still. That was the first terrible mercy of it. She was straining. One arm reached toward Lucien, the other braced hard against something unseen, elbow locked, body angled as though she were standing in a violent current. The line of her throat was taut with effort. Around her middle, the water darkened and tightened in bands, as if some invisible hand had wrapped itself there and was pulling with patient authority.
Sabine,
Lucien said, and her name came out of him like recognition, sharpened by blood. Her eyes found him at once. For one brief moment, she looked terribly alive in the old sense of the word, meaning full of struggle. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Then sound did come, broken and jagged as crockery in a flood. "Not!" she said. The pull at her body tightened. The water climbed higher around her ribs. Lucien took a step forward. Evelyn caught his wrist with iron calm. "No.
Evelyn,
We do not understand the mechanics."
that's my sister.
"I know what she is," Evelyn said, not taking her eyes off the fountain. "And if you go into something built like a trap just because it wore her face kindly, I will drag you back out by your ankles and insult you while I do it." Sabine struck the inner reflection of the reflection with her palm. The water rippled but did not break. The force of it startled even Claudette. Again, Sabine tried to speak, and this time the words came with visible pain, like hooks being pulled through silk. "Didn't," she gasped. "Choose." The whole courtyard seemed to hear it. Alice made a sound under her breath, half horror, half vindication. The bands of darkness around Sabine's waist jerked hard. She stumbled backward, caught herself with one hand against what looked for an instant like stone, burial stone, old, closed, deliberate stone. "Inside," she managed. Then with fierce desperation, "Inside me!" Lucien surged forward again, and again Evelyn held him fast. Sabine's face twisted, not in helplessness, but in effort, in refusal, in the stubbornness of someone who had once already done the impossible and was being asked to do it a second time with less body to work with. Then whatever held her pulled. Sabine was dragged backward through the dark water as if the reflection itself had teeth, but not before she struck it one last time. Her palm hit the surface with a sharp crack. The image vanished. The fountain returned to ordinary water, trembling violently now, as though ashamed of what it had shown, and there, on the black glass of the surface, remained the mark of her hand, just for several impossible seconds. But it remained. Lucien understands what his father did. No one spoke until Sabine's handprint faded. Even then, the speech returned to the courtyard reluctantly, like a servant who had heard too much and was reconsidering the value of employment. Lucien stood rigid beside the fountain, Evelyn's hand still around his wrist, though now it was less restraint than contact. He was staring at the water as if it had just presented him with a bill for every debt his family had ever tried to hide in the walls. Alice was the first to move. She stepped back slowly, one hand over her mouth, her notes forgotten on the table inside. She looked suddenly younger and older both, which is one of the less charming effects of ancestral horror. Genealogy is perfectly tolerable when it lives in archives and surnames. It becomes considerably ruder when it stands in front of you and admits to murder. Claudette, for once, had no immediate line. She only watched Lucien with that sharp, difficult tenderness older women sometimes reserve for men being dragged to the truth by the throat. Lucien drew one breath, then another. When he finally spoke, the voice was quiet enough to make the others lean toward it.
Morvant wanted me,
he said. No one contradicted him. There was nothing to contradict.
He wanted the future, the sun, the bright branch, the thing the Devereux name intended to become.
His mouth twitched in something far too bitter to qualify as a smile.
He didn't love me more than he loved Sabine or Annalise or even our mother. I was withheld because I was valuable.
The words were clear, simple. That was what made them terrible. Evelyn let him have the full blade of it without trying to comfort him. Comfort was often just grief wearing a napkin over its shirt front. Lucien needed witness.
Our father,
he continued,
looked at his children and decided which one was treasury and which one was tribute.
Alice flinched. He turned then, not toward her exactly, but toward the fact of her being there, and some part of his expression softened with sorrow for what she had inherited simply by being born downriver from all the rot.
I'm sorry,
he said. The apology was larger than him. It belonged to blood, to parchment, to old men who had mistaken ownership for order and sacrifice for strategy. Alice met his eyes with compassion.
You didn't do it.
No,
Lucien said.
But I was built out of it.
That was harder to hear than shouting would have been, because that was the true obscenity of families like his. Evil was rarely content to remain event. It preferred structure. It liked to become custom, then expectation, then architecture. A cruelty repeated often enough in fine rooms developed a reputation for dignity. Lucien looked back at the fountain.
He kept the sun for the dynasty.
He said each word landing with lethal calm.
And for the daughter to the dark.
Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Claudette exhaled through her nose, the weary acknowledgement of a woman who had seen too many men build their legacy out of daughters and still expect to be remembered kindly.
And even that failed,
he said.
Sabine was stronger than he accounted for, stronger than Morvant accounted for. She was sacrificed in my place. But he did not get all of her. He could not finish.
When Alice spoke, her voice was unsteady but clear.
Which means the contract never properly concluded.
Yes.
Lucien said. There it was, the shape of the crime in full. His father's love had never been love, only valuation dressed in finer cloth. Even being chosen had been its own desecration. To be preserved as a legacy was merely a more elegant way of being used. Lucien sat heavily on the edge of the fountain rim and bowed his head for one brief second, unable to remain upright while the truth rearranged his bones. When he looked up again, the sorrow remained. So did the rage.
He gave her to the dark, and still she was more than it could hold.
The body, the loophole, the road ahead. For a long moment after Lucien spoke, no one moved. The courtyard held them in a kind of dreadful stillness, the sort that comes after a bell has rung, but before the sound has finished deciding who it belongs to. The fountain water had settled again, though not into innocence. Once water has agreed to show the dead, it cannot entirely go back to being decorative. Alice was the first to gather herself. Scholars often recovered first because terror, if sufficiently structured, resembled work. She crossed back to the fountain with notes still in her hand. Pages trembled only slightly and looked down into the black water as though it were a blackboard that might yet be bullied into clarity.
Then the body is the unresolved vessel,
she said. Claudette, leaning on her cane beside the column, nodded once.
Yes.
Alice swallowed and kept going, assembling the logic aloud because some truths only fully arrive when spoken in order.
Morvant wanted potential, unlived life, promise, the future of the line.
She glanced at Lucien, then away.
Sabine became the substitute when the bargain tore, but she interrupted the claim before it could fully conclude. He got enough to wound the bloodline, enough to stay attached, but not enough to finish ownership.
Evelyn stood opposite her. Which is why she keeps reaching thresholds. Alice nodded.
Yes, as devolution has completed, she would have be gone. The claim had fully failed. She might be haunting, freely or resting or raging or any of the ordinary terrible things ghosts do. But this...
She gestured toward the water, toward the handprint already gone, and yet somehow still present in everyone's eyes.
The body,
Lucien said flatly.
The body,
Alice confirmed. Claudette gave a soft, humorous hum.
Body is the vessel,
she said.
But not the whole of it. Vessel is too gentle of a word. Makes it sound like a teacup. What you got there, Cher, is a lock.
Lucien turned toward her. Claudette tapped her heel once against the floor.
A body used in blood work can stay in the architecture of a thing. Hidden wrong, buried wrong, marked wrong, left holding the last ugly little splinter of a bargain, and suddenly your grave is not a grave anymore. It's a clasp, a place dark keeps putting its hands.
Evelyn's eyes narrowed as the shape of it settled into her. So every time Sabine reaches for a threshold, she said slowly, she isn't failing to haunt properly. She's attempting a crossing and being interrupted by the unfinished claim.
Yes,
Alice said. Lucien let out a breath that was almost a laugh and nowhere near amusement.
We have found a way to make my sister sound like contested real estate.
Alice looked at him with exhausted patience and something gentler beneath it.
No,
she said quietly.
Your family did that. I'm just translating.
Lucien looked back toward the records room, toward the shelves of polished euphemism and administrative rot, and the truth seemed to settle around him in layers. His family had built itself with a horror mortared into the foundation, turned it into continuity, inheritance, reputation. Somewhere on the long, well-dressed machinery of Devereux power, there had always been a place where Sabine's absence was doing labor.
The house was fed with her,
he said. No one answered immediately because there it was, obscene, horrific, brutal fact. The Devereux line, its influence, its staying power in the city, its carefully maintained air of old money and older mystery, had not simply survived around a hidden crime. It had benefited from one. Some part of the family's enduring weight in New Orleans had been purchased with a daughter-made substitute and then tucked out of sight before the questions could start breeding. Evelyn did not move from his side, but her voice, when it came, was clear and steady. And she didn't choose it. Lucien closed his eyes briefly.
That matters,
Alice said.
I am aware everyone in this courtyard is very fond of telling me that infernal law contains loopholes,
Lucien said, opening them again.
I confess it remains a deeply irritating sentence.
Claudette's mouth twitched. Evelyn smiled without humor. Most useful truths are. Alice ignored them both, which was becoming one of her more admirable traits.
It matters because consent isn't decorative in these systems,
she said.
It's structural. If she was substituted and compelled rather than willingly yielded, then ownership is weakened from the start. Add to that the incomplete dissolution, the unresolved body, the interrupted claim.
She looked down at her notes, then back up.
Sabine may not simply be trapped.
The courtyard seemed to listen in. Lucien's face hardened.
Go on.
Alice did.
She may have standing.
There it was again, that horrible and magnificent word, standing. A right to contest. A right to remain present where the contract had failed to erase her. A right, however bitter and technical and infernal, to persist inside the flaw. Evelyn looked at the fountain. A loophole. Claudette smiled then, but it was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had just watched a lock discover it was rusty.
Yes,
she said.
A loophole.
Lucien stared into the black water, and for the first time since Sabine's face had returned to his life, something shifted in his expression beyond grief or hope. Hope would have been too clean, too naive, too easy to kill. This was stranger than hope. Recognition, perhaps. His sister was not merely a wound replaying itself, or a ghost asking to be solved and put away like a difficult inheritance. She might remain because hell had made a clerical error, and Sabine Devereux, bless her stubborn, ruined soul, had known enough while dying to wedge herself into it. Alice drew in a careful breath.
If her body is the unresolved vessel, then whatever was left inside of it, on it, or through it is still keeping the road open.
Which means, Evelyn said, we are not dealing with a haunting in the usual sense.
No.
Claudette agreed.
You're dealing with a girl who turned into the flaw in a paperwork.
A hush moved through the courtyard then, subtle as a change in weather. The fountain water darkened, the air pressed closer. Somewhere beneath the old stone, something shifted with the patient, dreadful discretion of a truth deciding whether to reveal itself. Evelyn felt it first in her hand, the same ache the stone had left in her palm before, as though the house were passing her a message it did not wish to speak aloud. Lucien Devereux stepped nearer the basin for one suspended second, No one moved. Then from somewhere below them, deeper than pipes and older than plaster, came a single knock. Alice startled. Claudette's bracelets gave a small, ominous sound as she straightened. Evelyn turned toward the flagstones, every part of her suddenly certain that the sound had come from further down than the courtyard should have allowed. Lucien did not flinch. He placed one hand above the fountain rim, slowly, almost reverently, and bowed his head as if listening through the stone. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that the house seemed to lean in to hear it.
She was never laid to rest,
he said. Silence gathered hard around them. His hand tightened against the fountain.
She was stored.
Another knock appeared from below. No one spoke. The water in the basin gave one slow, depthless shiver, and the courtyard, having been made to witness, kept its own counsel. The truth beneath the house has shifted now, and it will not shift back quietly. Sabine was not erased. She was interrupted. The claim did not close cleanly. The dead did not consent, and somewhere below the stone something answered when it was named. Some graves are graves, some are locks, and some are built to keep the living from asking the right question for as long as possible. Next time, the road ahead will not lead outward, but down, into the flaw in the contract, into the body left tangled in the architecture, into the old crime the house has been carrying all this time. We will continue next time.